My name is Ray. I work full-time at Seek as a tester or developer. I'm also organizing another meetup called MST.QA, short for Melbourne Software Testing Meetup Group. So I organize meetups as well. If you're interested in testing or software quality engineering, feel free to check out our website. MST.QA is the website. I also run a conference called tconf.io. It is a software testing conference that we kind of build on top of the meetup group. So yeah, feel free to check out our website as well. So, all right. Actually, before I start, just wanted to find out how many people here actually used Selenium before. All right, not a lot. Great. Good. How many people is actually kind of madly in love with Selenium as a tool? Just want to find out. No one? All right, great, because I'm not going to say good things about Selenium tonight. Just, so make that clear. All right, cool. So Selenium is basically the front-end test automation tool that we use to do integration testing for the last 10 years. So in the last 10 years, lots of things has changed in the front-end space. We've got lots of framework and the tooling around it. It's evolved a lot, but unfortunately, I think the testing bit hasn't. We are still stuck with a tool that is 10 years old, and we have to live and breathe it every day when it comes to testing, doing some integration testing on the front end. Until we found out last year when Cypress.io came out, and it is like a saver, and I'm personally a big fan of it, and we use Cypress at Seek. It's running in production, it's running our smoke tests, it's running our UI automation tests on every single build. So we've been using it for the last couple months, and we like it, and that's why I'd like to introduce it to you guys. Cypress is relatively new. It's a US-based startup. At the moment, it is still in private beta, but it has a biggish customer base. That's what they tell me anyway. So if you wanted to get onto Cypress, so just go to cypress.io. You need to fill a form to get yourself on their private beta tester list, or you can talk to them on Gitter, on the Gitter channel, or just send them a Twitter message. They'll hook you up, all right, and you'll be up and running in no time. So what is Cypress? Cypress is a test engine that runs unit tests and integration tests in your browser. So it is actually built on top of the Mocha framework, so you can actually use it to run unit tests if you like, but the main purpose is to run like the UI-driven kind of integration test with Cypress.io. So I just wanted to make it clear, it is not Selenium. It has nothing to do with Selenium, and it is not built on top of Selenium like many other variations of Selenium frameworks that we've seen in the last few years. So it runs on Google Chrome, and it runs on headless Google Chrome if you run the tool in CI mode. So I'll get into the details later. So first, I'd like to say a few things about Selenium. We all know, like, we use it kind of day to day. I use it kind of day to day. Although we try to do, these days, we try to do Seek, we try to do as little, like big front-end end-to-end tests as little as possible. Unfortunately, we still have a handful of front-end tests that we use to kind of stitch all the modules together and making sure everything's happening, on an end-to-end from an end-to-end point of view. But yeah, it's when we use it, it's painful to debug. You basically see browser windows popping up, and you'll do browser.pause and try to figure out if something goes wrong. The test can be flaky. We all know that, and the developer experience is very poor. Usually, they get the QAs to do it. So yeah. But unfortunately, there isn't really another choice. In the last few years, we've got a few other frameworks to look at, but they're all basically built on top of Selenium as different variations. So we end up using Selenium. We end up spending more time writing acceptance tests than writing the feature. So the feature may take 2 hours to finish, but the test takes 3 days. So that leads to this rage quit. So somehow Canvas, the tool I use, doesn't allow me to put photos in there, but you get the idea. The URL works. It's a very vivid picture. You'll see if you pop it in there. Yeah. Anyway, so in the next few slides, I'd like to take you through some of the differences that I found through doing some research and using Cypress on day-to-day basis. You probably can find most of this stuff from their documentations. I'll just kind of run a couple slides here to save you maybe a few hours of work. So yeah, so the main difference between Cypress and Selenium is the architecture difference. And the focus of the Cypress team is to increase the developer experience when they're writing the acceptance test, so to make it easy to write tests. So as you can see on the left-hand side in green, that's Cypress. Right-hand side is Selenium. Left-hand side is Cypress. So Selenium is architected to be outside the browser and sending commands remotely. So you typically spin up like a Selenium server, you send commands to it, and the Selenium server will control the browser using like Chrome driver or whatever version of driver there is. So Selenium itself is actually architected outside the browser and using the APIs to control the browser. On the other hand side, Cypress is actually running inside the browser. It's in the same run loop as the application. So by doing that, it actually knows a lot about your application and the tests you are running with it. Selenium is not aware of the async requests happening inside the browser. So for example, you load a page, fire up a few async calls, and something failed, the DOM is not updated. Selenium wouldn't know. Selenium just give you an error message like element not found, or timeout exception, or like some outdated DOM exception. But on the other hand side, Cypress knows what is going on inside the application, and it will tells you the number of requests, that's AJAX requests being fired, and the response coming back. So it helps like debugging. I'll show it to you in the demo. So we're writing Selenium. A big part of it is like writing libraries to kind of handle the waits. We all have like a wrappers around the Selenium action. For example, wait and click, wait and verify, or wait and verify and wait and click, that kind of things. So there's a lot of those stuff that we need to build with Selenium. With Cypress, it basically handles all the waitings for you. So you just tell the browser what to do, and the Cypress will wait until certain state is reached. Selenium is pretty close to a real user behavior because it drives the browser through its API. It supports all native browser events. On the other hand side, Cypress is a bit different. It partly uses similar JavaScript events, but it also uses native events as much as possible. Ultimately, all of the events and the default actions of the browser are respected by Cypress, but it's not like Selenium. It's like from a pure end user point of view. Yeah. Just a quick slide about Cypress versus Projector. So Projector is show you something kind of built on top of Selenium. It checks the Angular object on window and kind of type in the Angular internal queuing to do the waiting. But Cypress, on the other hand, is actually a tool that is not implemented specific to the ways of how any framework works. It's really just framework agnostic. So Cypress works with Angular. It also works with React or any kind of front-end stack you would like. Right, so well, you're pretty much basically 4 commands away from running Cypress. So at the moment it's in private beta, but the CI mode, which means the command line mode, is actually free. So you can just go install Cypress CLI, npm install, Cypress install, and you can run it just as you would running like a Mocha test. You don't need to be a private beta tester to use that. You can just do it today. So so the CI mode is free. The CLI is free. The GUI part is not free. So you need private beta access to use the GUI of Cypress. There's a quick snapshot of the Cypress commands. They're all async. Probably look very familiar. So you get the main DOM object, find some button and click to it. It's pretty much like jQuery stuff. All right, I'll show you a demo. Yeah. Hopefully this will work. I pray to the demo god. All right, firstly, I'll show you running Cypress in the command line mode. So I'm running this in 6 front-end codebase, and so this is where we actually use it. So when you do Cypress run and you give it a spec, so we've got a smoke test that's written with Cypress. Huh? Oh yeah, sure. I'll see. How about that? Is that a bit better? All right. Yeah, the test failed because I wanted to fail, but because I'm intended to show you a failure scenario rather than a successful scenario. But I guess, it runs the test, it tells you some assertion has failed here, and the good part is I can show you a video. So the test actually go to the local instance of seek.com.au, click on the classification drop down, and trying to assert that there's a job count coming back for the accounting classification. So in this test, I actually turned off the mock for that job count API. So I made the test fail. The test is trying to assert there's a certain number, but it's not there. But it's kind of cool that for every Cypress test run, you get the screenshot on failure for free, and you also get a video that is available to look at. So there's no menu setup to get those things up and running. So next I'd like to show you the Cypress GUI. So basically you type Cypress open, you get this thing going, and I've got some tests that's currently running in our production. I'll quickly show you the same smoke test that will fail. Oh, great. Let's try that again. Smoke. All right, so it's a pretty quick test. Goes to classification, trying to check the counts is here. Not sure if you can see it from here. If you look at this part closely, it says we've got a counts API that happens after the page load as like a live hook events. It goes away and fetch the counts for each classification. But Cypress here is telling me one of the XHR requests has failed, and it gives a 500 error that tells me the counts API actually failed. So it kind of already tells me a lot more about what's going on with my tests compared with Selenium. So if a Selenium test failed at this point, you'll get like an element not found exception, and you have to kind of do browser.pause and then manually navigate to that step, open up the classification drop down and find out, oh, the counts is not there. Maybe the API failed. So with Cypress, you can already tell that there's a few things going on. Yeah, we've got an API token request. We've got a count request that's happening. So, and this is the reason why the test has failed. It really gives you the visibility when you're writing tests. You can see, oh, you can quickly develop your test and find out what went wrong. Instead of, on the other hand, when you're using Selenium, you'll be really kind of annoyed with all the useless errors that Selenium gives you, and you have to kind of manually go and investigate it. So that's a quick demo. So I've got a few slides to quickly go through Cypress APIs. So there's typical navigation and DOM querying and the traversal kind of APIs. You can do the actions, that check and click, that kind of stuff. And you can make network requests from your Cypress test. You also have your connectors there, and you get access to the window object, local storage. Pretty much most of the things you can or you want to do with Selenium, you can do it with Cypress. Yeah, that's a fairly self-explanatory API. So if we take a closer look at some of the APIs, some of the highlights here is you can actually make an HTTP request from the browser, and you can use that to kind of set up some sort of seedings as a part of your test, or querying your database if you like. And you can, the second API here, Cypress.server, is a stubbing API. You can set up a server and listen to certain routes, and then you can program the routes to return 200 or 400 different scenarios writing the test. So instead of setting some mocks outside of your front-end test, you can just use the API to do that. You can set up certain command, for example, as alias, and then you can use it later. It's like a macro thing. And you can also execute system command from Cypress. I don't know why you want to do that, but apparently you can. And you basically have access to the jQuery object if you wanted to. So there's a fair bit of flexibility in the APIs. So we use Cypress on a day-to-day basis. We haven't converted all of our Selenium tests to Cypress yet. It's a big job. No one wants to do Selenium, basically. But yeah, we found it gives us a great developer experience, and we can pretty much just focus on writing the tests and expect things to work when it should work. And it's fairly easy to set up and run. The documentation is good and always updated. Given the UI, we have good visibility when writing and running the test. You basically see what's going on right there, instead of the old Selenium way you have to wait for the browser to kind of pop up. It's a bit annoying there. So the UI is auto reload. Every time you change your test, the UI just refresh and rerun your test. So it has stubbing and mocking built in the first place, as I just showed in a few API comments. You can just do it as part of your test. It does out-of-the-box video recording and a screenshot on test failures. So they also say they'll pretty much open source the whole thing when it's in public beta. And a cool feature that's coming out is you can actually run your Cypress test on your CI, and because they record everything you do as a part of your test, you can actually go back and review your test. You can just step through every single test step and find out why a test, for example, failed on your CI box or your Docker container, but works locally. So this is something that we are very much looking forward to. So our developers are pretty happy running Cypress. It also comes with some limitations. So you can pretty much just have one super domain per test. You can go from Google to Seek. The iframes are not supported. You can't navigate from insecure content to secure content. And at the moment, it only works on Google Chrome at the moment. Those are the limitations we found, and I think they're documented on their documentation as well. So what is not clear at the moment is, it's still in beta, so we don't know how much they're going to charge us. Take my money, tell me how much. Yeah, so I think their release date has been delayed for a couple of months, but last time I checked, they said they're gonna pretty much go public beta very soon. So yeah, to get started on Cypress and writing your tests, if you like to use their UI, which is the main kind of developer productivity boost there, you need to get early access from Cypress.io. If you just want to use the CLI tool, it's free. And they've got a kitchen sink app on GitHub that you can go through the APIs fairly quickly. And that's it. Thank you.